Jack of all trades, master of none can only mean that Jack was in Cocksure. I am Arlen J. Welcome to the Cocksure Soul Podcast.
What's going on, guys? Arlen J here, mindset coach for Alpha by Prodigy Mindset Gym. Welcome to the Cocksure Soul Podcast, where we are the modern day Renaissance men, the jack of all trades, masters of all that we focus in on. Let's get focused. Now, at the end of this, I'm going to be giving you a coaching tip on how to better align your physical body with your mental body. We need to start thinking of our minds like a body because we train our minds the way we train our body, through repetition. Now, our topic of today, the importance of becoming a professional of thought. How do we become a professional of thought? What does it take to become a professional of thought? What does that exactly look like? Now, I want to begin by talking about my dude, Malcom Gladwell. If you don't know this guy's books, check him out. We're going to be talking about his book, Outliers and the 10,000 Hour Rule. Now, Gladwell explains that reaching the 10,000 hour rule, which he considers to be the key to success in any field, is simply a matter of practicing a specific task that can be accomplished with 20 hours of work a week for 10 years. 20 hours of work a week for 10 years. Okay. He gives an example here. It's a good example. I want to start with this one, and it's the Beatles. Now, the Beatles had 10,000 hours together on stage before they'd even come over to the United States. Does that give you some perspective there? So 10,000 hours, these guys, they played 8 hours a day, 7 days a week. And they put in more time than what most bands, as Malcom Gladwell says, they put in more time than most bands put in their entire career together on stage. Now, when you think about it, this 20-hour rule that he says, 20 hours of work a week for 10 years to become successful in any field, that's got to have a sliding scale. You're not going to get LeBron James doing just 20 hours of work a week for 10 years and become LeBron James. It's just not going to happen. So it really depends on what it is that you're doing. What are you focusing in on? And also, where are you coming from? Specifically, what does your subconscious mind look like, operate like? That is a huge factor on how many hours you're going to put in a very condensed time, right? So the one thing about the Beatles is that is definitely what I am talking about when it comes to training our minds. We have to condense it in the way that the Beatles condensed it. 7 days a week, 8 hours a day. They saturated their lives together on stage and they became tight as a unit. Now, when we start to think about our minds and becoming tight as a unit with our minds, this is the approach that we have to take. The LeBron James, the Beatles, not necessarily the 20 hours of work a week for 10 years. That's not going to cut it. Now, let me give you an example of why this is so important. A lot of people out there, I see this a lot on my social media feeds. I see guys presenting programs on learning to read faster. And this reminds me actually of Ty Lopez. You guys remember probably Ty Lopez, 2016, 17. This guy was all over YouTube. He had a bunch of bookshelves behind him next to his Ferraris. And these books were massive in regards to the bookshelf, the size, the amount of books. It was massive. And he talks about that was the key, knowledge, right? Knowledge. He kept hearing that word over and over and over again. But the thing about that is that was great and all, but what happens if we have a negative subconscious mindset, right? Somewhere along the line, Ty Lopez was instilled with a growth mindset. This guy has foresight like no other. He sees what is coming ahead of the curve like no other. And now that element within itself allowed him to take in all of this information, if he did read all those books, to take all of that information in and utilize it properly. Now, if you have a subconscious program that doesn't have you moving forward, such as maybe you are definitely into self-development and you seek out coaching, you do programs, you read books, it's the physical aspect to training, to yoga, to meditation, whatever it is, but you still find yourself falling backwards into old habitual patterns of thinking and habitual patterns of just being, then most likely you have a subconscious program that is not allowing you to move forward. You've got the gas and the brakes going at the same time and you're getting nowhere. So that's why we have to work on the subconscious, and we get there by becoming a professional of thought. Now with children, it's much different. I worked with Dr. Liddy Hazen out of Power Play MD in Beverly Hills over an 8-year span, and I worked with children from ages 3 to 18. I learned the importance of instilling a proper growth mindset into a child and what that does to a child, how they can excel. Now, most of us, if you're out there and you're working from your subconscious mindset, then that's what you're riding on. That's you're working with the limitations and with the expectations of your mindset, right? So the idea is that you want to be able to proceed as more of a professional of thinking and training for that, so that you can remove the blocks, so that you can all of a sudden, yes, do the courses, read faster, take in more books, and be able to utilize it properly, right? To actually move ahead and get out of the habitual patterns that have been holding you back. Now, the Jesuits have been saying this for 500 years. I think it's maybe Dr. Bruce Lipton maybe who talks about this as well, but this is attributed to Aristotle and St. Francis Xavier and St. Ignatius Loyola. These guys talked about, give me the child from 0 through 7 and I will show you the man. They knew the importance of the development that happened between the ages of 0 through 7. Now, if we did not have a childhood that enabled us to have a growth mindset and to be able to have foresight like Tai Lopez had and utilize all the information and just kind of get on that tip of like, man, I got to take in as much as I can from some of these dudes out there like Malcom Gladwell, brilliant guy. You take his information in and you can excel if you're already from a place of a subconscious mindset that allows you to do so. But if you are not, you need to start thinking about training your mind to become first and foremost a professional of thought, a professional of thinking, and it takes more so what the Beatles did. Now that's somewhere 7 days a week, 8 hours a day to hit 10,000 hours, right around 3.4 years, right around that mark right there. So 8 hours a day, 7 days a week, it's pretty taxing, right? You need to know how to take breaks. You need to know how to train. That's going to require us to become a little bit more finely tuned in how we proceed in our training and how we actually map out our day. When do we train? How do we train? I have a training program, if you don't know, the Alpha program. The Alpha program, I teach this, and I teach this in the way that you have to get focus in the level of primal focus. That's what you have to do. Primal focus means that you almost need to take it to the point of life or death. Is a bear chasing you? That's primal focus to get away, right? That's exactly what it takes to step into the position or step into the path of learning how to become a professional of thought. It must be primal. It must be your sole focus. When it becomes your sole focus, like the Beatles had 7 days a week, 8 hours a day on stage, they became tight. So will your subconscious, so will your level of thinking, so will your ability to rise and take in all the information from some of these great coaches out there right now, and to be able to utilize it in a way like you've never been able to do before. Now, I'm going to give you a coaching tip on how to align your physical body again with your mental body, because we're going to think about training our minds, right? Think about training our minds the way we train our body. We train it through repetition. And we must begin to learn that it is much more important to train our minds before our body. I can't tell you how many years I spent in the gym. I was a kid, man, who was definitely insecure and just, I swung from confidence to not having confidence all the time. But I was in the gym and I was built and I looked like I'd probably be confident, but I wasn't. I was beating myself up in the gym. I was getting nowhere. Had I had a amazing growth mindset and a well-established subconscious mindset that supported me with absolute confidence and self-love and guidance, man, I could have excelled even more in the gym, right? But that's besides the point. Getting our body aligned with our mind, this is how you're going to do it. You're going to want to take a notepad, paper, write down a letter to yourself from your future self. This is the future self that has already manifested all of your goals. This is the future self that knows what it feels like to have manifested all of those goals. And that is the place you're going to write from. You're going to write down, if you don't know your goals, you want to get straight with that first, but you're going to write down those goals from your future self. Do you remember this? Do you remember that? We did this. We took these steps. We executed in such an order that was so excellent that I've got to tell you, it feels so good to have achieved it. And what you're going to want to do, however you write that out, you're going to want to take that, fold that piece of paper up, and you're going to want to carry it with you. And you're going to want to look at it, and you're going to want to read it. But most importantly, you're going to want to breathe in the feeling that is equivalent to the feeling that you're reading on that piece of paper, the feeling that your future self is telling you of how good it feels to have manifested everything. You want to breathe that into your nervous system. You want to start getting aligned with that future self that has already accomplished everything that you want to see happen. You want to get it into your physical body, and you want to align it into your thinking, and you want to get so almost to the point where the Beatles are. You want to be opening that thing up all day long, all day long. If it seems taxing, come on, man, you're probably distracted by something else anyway, right? That's not going to help you get to your future goals. This is something that you're going to want to do. If you guys have not read Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich, he has a segment in that book, and he does in the original. I'm not too sure about the updated version, the original, where you have to write out sort of a letter to yourself of what it is, a promise letter. I will say for now, it's not exactly what he says, but it was a promise letter in a sense of what it is that you were going to do in order to receive the things that you desired in life. And man, I tell you what, that's where I first learned the repetition. This was probably back 2011, 2012, impacted me greatly. That sheet of paper, was a couple of sheets actually, was so soft and beaten up. If somebody looked at it just 3 months after, they would think that paper was like from 10 years ago. So soft and beaten up because I opened it up and closed it. And even though I had memorized it, I still utilized the piece of paper. I honored the paper. I honored the practice. I had absolute respect for process and repetition. And this is what it takes, just like the Beatles did. The Beatles did in somewhat probably 3.4 years, 7 days a week, 8 hours a day on stage together. So that's what you're going to want to do with that letter from your future self. Now, the Alpha program, if you have not checked it out and you want to learn exactly the process, a really stellar process on how to become a professional of thinking, a professional of thought, you're going to want to check out the Alpha program at prodigymindset.com. Man, I've got guys just this past round, guys are talking about how they're dreaming. And in their dreams, they're actually saying, I want more out of life. Their subconscious is running on the program or on the focus that they want more out of their lives. And that's what we need to get to. We need to get to the point where our subconscious is working for us, even when we're not conscious of it. But that's going to take saturation. It's going to take primal focus. But that is what is needed right now. If you want to step out of the limitations of your subconscious mind, you're going to want to become a professional of thought, a professional of thinking. If you've got children, you're thinking about having children, you're going to want to instill this into them at a very young age. You want to check that out. You got kids? You want to go and check out agogiparents.com. That's my other sister program, which actually teaches children how to think this way, how to develop consciousness at a very early age, starting at the age of 3. All right, guys. I'm going to check out here, but not before I leave you with access code WAVES to catch my shoot with Heaven's Star. She is absolutely exquisite. Go to arlenjphoto.com where you see windows and walls. That's where you're going to want to put in waves to catch that shoot. Keep the mindset tight. Dial it in, man. Dial in those thoughts in a very linear way. When you rep those things out, it's going to snowball into other positive thoughts, positive actions, ultimately a positive life. If you want to get on the tip of dialing this in a very systematic way, check out my Alpha program at prodigymindset.com. I will check you guys soon. Lates.